Jessica, wake up.
Oh, hi there. What are you doing here? Ah, right. We're doing a show. And you're here to listen. Got it. It's What's So Funny. And I am your host, Guy McPherson. Glad you could make it. We've got a world premiere tonight. What? Jessica Holmes, you know her from the TV. She was all over our television sets a few years back. She's probably best known for her work on the Royal Canadian Air Farce, and she had her own show too. Ooh, but where's she been lately? That's what I wanted to know. Jessica Holmes had never done a podcast before until tonight. She's done radio interviews, though, so if you're listening on radio, this isn't so special. But if you're listening as a podcast, oh boy, it's her first. She tells us where she's been. She's been doing comedy, and a lot of it. We just don't get to see it because she's not in the comedy clubs where she started out. She's doing other kind of work. Still comedy work. She talks about it here. She talks about lots of things. I don't want to spoil it for you. No spoiler alerts in the introductions. You're just going to have to listen. Jessica Holmes was a delight to talk to. She's a morning person, so we recorded this in the morning. That's why she's sharp, and I'm my usual dopey self. But you've come to love and expect that, haven't you? Okay, so without any further ado, here's my talk with Jessica Holmes. Welcome to your hotel room, Jessica.
Yes, here I am, beautiful Fairmont Pacific Rim. I have
Pretty
to say,
sweet.
Vancouver is gorgeous, and then this hotel on top, it's dream come true.
Yeah, no kidding.
The police will have to drag me out of here.
Usually when I go to a comics hotel room, they're not staying in the Pacific Rim.
I know, I sort of wanted to put myself up here because I'm doing a show here tonight, a fundraiser. And because they're trying to raise funds for ovarian cancer, I foot the bill for the hotel.
What? Nice.
Yeah, well, I don't want to take the steam away from the lady balls.
Canadian comedy's been very good to you.
It has. I've had a really good run. I have to say I fell into it slightly accidentally. I never
Into
had
comedy?
Yeah, like I never had the self-esteem to think I could be a comedian. Like I loved Carol Burnett, watched her show, but it never occurred to me that I could try out for that until a friend dared me to try stand-up at university. And it was truly the scariest moment of my life when I heard my name called and I was walking up to the stage and, you know, your knees are buckling and your throat's so dry. And I grabbed some stranger's drink and downed it and then went up to the stage. But it was...
How did it go?
It went fairly well for a first timer, and the club manager, James Vanderberg, loved it and asked me to come back the following week when there was a showcase for Just for Laughs. And I went and did the showcase, and they added me to the Just for Laughs lineup. It was crazy. It's not normally how
like
things
your second
go.
time in,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, and there was an agent in the audience that night, and she became my agent. I mean, it was too easy. And you know what? There's a downside to having it come that easy at the start, because then I sort of, as the years went by, I was like, well, I want everything easy. Yeah, so I don't know that I necessarily appreciated it as much or took it that seriously. But I will say, even after I got the agent and Just for Laughs, I still worked for free other than that performance. I worked for free for 2 years, just every night in beer halls and whoever was having an open mic night. And there were a lot of embarrassing nights, like where there might be 2 people in the audience, or one night at Yuck Yuck's open mic night, a guy was throwing rubber chickens at the stage when people weren't getting laughs. So I do feel like I paid my dues in those 2 years.
Interesting, because I think most people know you from your own show, The Holmes Show, and years on Royal Canadian Air Farce.
Mm-hmm.
Sketch shows.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know you had the stand-up chops behind it. Because you don't do a lot of that now, do you? Other than
now I actually make my living doing stand-up, but in a way that no one knows about, because I'm on the corporate comedy circuit.
Yeah.
And so no other comedians, like on paper or in media, you might say, oh my gosh, I don't think she's worked in years. But I'm touring across Canada doing probably on average 2 shows a week in different cities. And it's normally for corporate clients. So like Pepsi will hire me, or Nissan Cars will hire me to go and perform comedy for their events. And so no one hears about these because they're not advertised. Meanwhile, this is my job. It's a job that is very secretive.
And a pretty good job, too. I know a lot of comics don't like the corporate end of things because they feel that they're going to be told what they can and can't say. And I always think, why wouldn't you take that as a challenge?
Yeah,
a writing challenge and a performing challenge, everything like that.
It's absolutely harder to get laughs when you're not allowed to go blue. And I welcome that challenge. I enjoy that. It also just happens to be a place where I'm comfortable in. I know a lot of comedians might be more comfortable in the bar scene, and that was never me. That was never my sort of comfort zone. I'm a little more, it's not that I'm a white collar person. It's that I like to have an actual stage. I like the audience to be seated facing the stage. I don't want people eating or walking out for a smoke in the middle of my set.
But doesn't that happen in the corporate world sometimes? I've heard stories where, it's during dinner, or you have to make announcements about dinner, or we got to listen to a comic. We just want to talk to our work buddies. Yeah,
I will say, now that I've been doing the corporate for, let's say, 10 years as my main source of employment, at the start, I would put up with a lot of those things. And then as my learning curve kicked in, I put it in my contract that people can't be serving dinner during my act. And like that it's meant to be a piece of theater. It's meant to be a performance where the audience is paying attention. So I make sure the bar is closed and there's an announcement for people to turn off their phones and there's no service. But at the start, it was such a nightmare because I didn't know to ask for those things. And so even one time I got hired to do comedy at a pool. And
a swimming pool.
At a swimming pool. It was at one of those hotels that has
Good
the swimming pool.
There.
Oh my gosh, everything was echoey.
Yeah.
Kids were coming down the slide, and then splash was getting on me when I was trying to do jokes. I was like, will I be electrocuted?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. So there's a humiliation that goes along with stand-up, but I would say it's going to be the same whether you're doing corporate comedy or doing the comedy circuit. I think your chance of having a good or bad show is about the same, in my experience.
Yeah, that's interesting because who knows in a club who's going to show up.
Well, and also
you could have a really hot, great crowd, or you could have people who are just drunk and not paying attention.
And sometimes it's a hot, great crowd, but maybe they're a jaded Toronto audience and they kind of have seen everything. And my stuff doesn't go over as well in a small basement comedy bar as it would in a large theater. Like I'm more of a theater comedian, I would say. My stuff is a bit more theatrical. I do characters. I do songs.
I saw you once.
Mm-hmm. Where was that?
You're not here. Mm-hmm. Have you ever played here?
I've never played a comedy club here
show.
In Vancouver.
Yeah. I saw you in St. John, New Brunswick.
Oh, was that the Comedy Awards?
It was.
Awesome.
I was really impressed.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And I wrote on my blog this, 2009. The lovely Jessica Holmes hosted, and I was reminded again at how showbiz works. For someone to gain a measure of success on television, they have to be pretty good most of the time. So even if you're not a fan of their TV work, they just might be decent in person. And she was. I can totally see how she got to where she is. The girl's got talent and charisma.
Oh, thank you. Was that the one Deborah Giovanni
She was on
well?
it?
Yes. Yeah, that I will say I was terrified to go to that event. And I remember Brian Nazimok was producing it, and he was backstage, and he knew that I have stage fright around other comedians.
Oh.
I don't know why.
So when you're doing a corporate, you're fine.
It's me
just
by
you.
myself, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think because I found sometimes other comedians could be maybe a little jaded or
jealous
or backstabbing or like I didn't have... Judgy, yeah. I wouldn't say that I felt welcomed into the comedy community ever at any point. And so as soon as I made a name for myself on TV and in the corporate world, I stopped going to comedy clubs. And that show in St. John's was my first time performing with other comedians in years. Uh-huh. And I was feeling really nervous because I just felt never quite as good as the other stand-ups. for who knows what reason. And Brian Nazimok backstage was looking at me, and I was poring over my notes, and I had all these cue cards, and I was so nervous. And he said, Jess, give me the cue cards. You know that you're funny. You know that you're funny, and you don't need this. And so he took the cue cards away, and I actually went out, and I'm so glad you liked it.
Yeah.
Because for me, that was a pivotal night. I was facing my fears head on.
Wow. And have you performed with other comedians since?
Yes. I started, after that show, I started being open to performing with other people. So it's neat. Even I just did a show in Ottawa last week with Crush Improv out of Ottawa. I feel creatively like the most important thing a performer can do is to face their fears and to do the things that are scary for them, but they know that's the next step. And for me, that's getting up on stage with other comedians or following other comedians. And so I do those things. Sometimes it goes well. Sometimes it's just as scary as I thought it would be. But I'm not a person who's going to rest on my laurels or just, do the same stuff over and over again. So it means a lot to me to get out there and keep trying.
So were you doing improv with Crush?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And it had been a long time. I mean, I was
You were
an
a
improviser.
high school champion.
Yeah. I started as an improviser, and that was my strongest feature. And then when I went to Second City and did improv there, again, I ended up with a bit of stage fright after maybe a few bad performances. I mean, that was like almost 20 years ago. And so I hadn't done a lot of improvising after Second City and after the Holmes show. I really wasn't doing any at all. And so, yeah, that was my first time back last week.
And it went pretty well?
It went pretty well. I won't say that I did any better than pretty well.
Like riding a bike, though, I imagine.
Yes. Yeah. It was the first scene. I was too nervous to really offer anything good. And then the second scene, I felt comfortable. And the third scene, I was like, don't make me leave. Yeah, I loved it. I'm going to go improvise with them again sometime.
I heard or read, I can't remember now, you compared going on stage with that moment when you're on a roller coaster and the bar comes down.
And when the bar clamps and you're like, why did I do this? This is horrible. This is the worst idea ever. And then the roller coaster happens and it's terrifying.
That's right. You can't back out of it now.
Yeah.
They're calling your name to the stage.
Yeah. But then after the ride's over, you say, that was pretty exciting. That was pretty different. I'm going to do that again.
I survived.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that, you know what? Sometimes I do feel like, oh my God, I survived. My worst stand-up experience ever was performing after Russell Peters at Yuck Yucks. And let me just say, Russell Peters
He opened for you.
Yes, which was so ridiculous. But I had just started on Air Farce, and I guess they thought, oh, she's headliner worthy now. But I just wasn't worthy to go on after Russell Peters. That's crazy. Like, nobody is worthy to go on.
Yeah, even when he was
Peters.
a club comic, he was just a solid pro.
And he has his fan base. Like, he has people driving from all over the place just to see him. They love him. And he got this giant standing ovation. And then I went up and told my goofy little stories and did my theatrical bits. And no one was laughing, and I still had to do it for a while. And when I came off stage, I got paid in cash. And I walked out of the theater and I was like, I feel humiliated. Like this is what it feels like to feel humiliated. And you know what? It's not even that bad. Like, I'm still alive. I still have my health. My friends still like me. And I ended up giving some of the money to a homeless person as I walked by, because I felt like almost like it was dirty money, undeserved money. And about a block later, this security guy came running up to me and he said, hey, I just wanted you to know I saw you give that homeless person a stack of bills, and that's amazing. Like, I just think that's wonderful. You've restored my faith in humanity, or something cheesy like that. And I was walking away and I was like, okay, so that's what life is about. And for me, it was a perspective moment, because I thought, whether I bomb on stage or not, that isn't my life. My life is about giving. My life is about loving people, friendships, blah, blah, blah. And then creativity is what I do with my experiences. But it was just good to realize that I could still have awesome feelings and an awesome experience right after bombing on stage.
Right. You're not sitting outside in the cold.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that
so as bad as it was, it wasn't
flipped
that
back
bad.
so quickly. Yeah.
That's Jessica Holmes I'm talking to. I'm Guy McPherson, and the show is What's So Funny. You're listening to Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. Are you friends with many, like with Russell or other comics?
Yeah, like when I don't keep in touch with any comedians outside of work, but definitely when I run into them. Like I just did another show with Russell a month ago, and this time I was opening for him, and that made way more sense. But it's great to see those people, and I really do have so much respect for them. And even if we only see each other every couple of years, when I run into comedians who I've bonded with, right away, it's the most incredible experience, and it's just like being home again with family. And an example is Patrick McKenna and Taz Norris were doing a show in Ottawa that I was part of a few months ago. And I had a sling of just bad corporate events where even though they were given a rider saying no bar during the show, the bar was like right where the stage was, and people were just drinking and hollering and whatever. And I was performing to nobody. No one was listening or cared. And so I opened up to Patrick and Taz when I saw them, and I was like, guys, I just don't know how to get over this feeling. Like, what a horrible, I can't shower away the gross feeling of being on stage with no one paying attention for 45 minutes. And they were awesome. And Patrick said, Jess, Colin Mockery says that he bombs more often than he succeeds when he does corporate gigs. And I was like, oh gosh, if Colin Mockery is bombing, then I'm right. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay to bomb if he's bombing. So I really feel like once performers get to a certain level and they've been doing it for a long time, they do have each other's backs. Where my experience with sort of not trusting the comedy community was all of the people at the very beginning competing with each other, feeling full of insecurity about, am I going to make it? And those are the people that sort of turned me off of comedy clubs for a long time. And now I would say my faith is restored in the kind of comedians I work with now. I trust them. I feel like we know that even if our peers are succeeding, that doesn't have any bearing on our success. Like if you do really well, it doesn't mean I can't do well. It means good for you. Mm-hmm. And good for me. Let's hope I do well.
Yeah, I can imagine there was a lot of jealousy with you doing so well right off the bat.
Yeah, there was.
And how soon, by the way, did you get your show after your first stand-up? Was it a year?
No, that would have been 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. Okay.
Which still is fairly fast. But the thing is, when I got that show, I did a Comedy Now special, then a TV series called The Itch. Then I got the Holmes show, then Royal Canadian Air Farce. So it was bang, 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 bang. It was very fast. And one night, an MC was introducing me, and he was like, I mean, I'm not saying I don't like her. I'm just saying you would think the networks can maybe find someone else to put on TV. Anyway, here's Jessica Holmes. And I was like, oh, God. So I was very aware that there might have been a sense of people not thinking I deserve to be where I was.
Yeah, I think that was clunky the way he
said that. Ridiculous. That was, yeah.
Because what he might mean is there's a whole country of really talented people.
Yeah, let's share the love. But you know what? Don't say that when you're introducing.
Exactly. I mean, but it was like when Corner Gas was on. Every cast member was in every other show. They were in Robson Arms and what?
Yes. So a moment like that, I get it. Yes, yeah. You're being lazy as a casting director, sure.
So you went to Air Farce, and you were the youngest cast member by a factor of whatever mathematical term.
The only one with their original teeth at the time.
Yeah. So there were 4 of them? I know there's Luba Goy, there's Roger Abbott.
And Don Ferguson.
Ferguson.
That was it at the time.
That was the 3.
Yeah.
And then you came into that. Now, you were feeling awkward around newer comics. Did they just welcome you in, or are they like, who's this kid?
No, they were so good. It was so relaxed. And in fact, it felt like, my cousins had just invited me over to hang out on their sofa together. Like it was
your old cousins.
Well, yeah, I will say for me, the age never played a part. Like they're just my friends, and we created some really fun stuff together. But I also wanted to learn from nice people. I wanted to be around nice, really nurturing mentor types. And for me, Don and Roger were that. And I loved being on that show. I loved working with them, but it just fit like a glove. Like socially, we just fit together really well. And it was, I would say, the easiest 6 years of my career.
Really?
Yeah. Just easy, fun, friendly.
Was that a show that you watched growing up?
No, only because my parents didn't have it on, and we only got 4 hours of TV a week, and so we were really we did like Carol Burnett show, and then maybe some of the Naked Gun shows, that type of thing, Love Boat. But when I was very familiar with them.
Yeah. Well, of course, in Canada, you can't not be familiar with the Air Farce.
Yeah.
So you get in my little blog write-up, like, I never really watched the Air Farce for whatever reason. But what I was trying to say is that sometimes we see somebody on a show, and I think John Mulaney's a great example. He's a fantastic stand-up comic, and I thought his sitcom, when it was on, well, it didn't do well, unlike the Air Farce, and I didn't like it. But when you see him live, you go, well, that's how he got the job.
Right.
You have to be good to get that bad show. Right. So that's what I was saying. When I saw you, I only knew that you were on Air Farce, didn't watch it. But then you go, man, that's why she's on all these shows, because she's a talented performer.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
That you can like a comedian but not be a fan of the show they're on.
Yeah, and I see so many people say, why would I go see this guy? He's on that terrible show. I go, well, they have writers on that show. He's not performing his own material on his TV show. Give him a chance doing his own thing at a club.
And sometimes people just aren't that familiar with the show, or they have a false concept of it. And one example of that is Jerry D, who is hysterical, so talented. And Mr. D is an awesome show.
It's a great show.
But my brother, when he came to see a show I was doing with Jerry D, he was like, Jerry D's hilarious. Like, I don't watch Mr. D because I think it's a kid's show, but he's hilarious. And I was like, it's not a kid show. It's
not
a sitcom. It's an adult show about making fun of kids. You get to watch a teacher be mean to his students. So yeah, in that case, it's just a misperception.
That's right. And then also in Canada, we have people who go, it's a Canadian show. Yeah, how good can it be? It's on in Canada.
And I will also say I'm always surprised. People, the first thing they want to tell me when I get to a show is who they've had before, who they've seen before. And half the time they have not so great things to say about these people that I think are fantastic, or they talk about how amazing someone was that maybe I'm not such a fan of. So it's so subjective, and that's why after a certain time you get a thicker skin in this business, because you realize it is subjective. Like, I could do the same jokes, exact same set in 3 different cities, and 2 will go great and 1 will just tank. I mean, there was just this thing, Margaret Cho in March, a New Jersey audience turned against her. I don't even know what she did. What'd she do that they...
Was it very political? I can't remember. I mean, most of her act is usually political, but usually she gets her crowd out to see her.
Right.
So there aren't people who are going, oh, I've heard of her. They're her diehard fans. But maybe this wasn't the case. I don't know. It was weird.
And in that case, like that, when I left Air Farce, I was a little nervous because I thought, oh, I've gotten used for 6 years. I've gotten used to this audience that just shows up specifically to see Air Farce because they love Air Farce. And when I left, I thought, okay, I'm kind of going back to ground zero here, because I have to learn how to make people laugh on my own terms. And it's not going to be the cushy audience that I had at Air Farce. It's going to be an audience of strangers who are getting to know me as a stand-up for the first time. And that was frightening, but again, something I really wanted to do to push myself and challenge myself. And so...
Did you leave?
There's perpetual rediscovery. Yes, I left Air Farce, but it turned out I left like 2 months before they announced the show was going off the air. So...
They couldn't go on without you.
No, you know what it was? They already knew, it turns out. They already knew that the show was ending. I didn't know that, but Don and Roger did. And for me, I had just felt like I've told every joke I can tell. I've played every character I can play here. I wanted to go off and sort of be challenged to find my own sense of humor again. And I mean, grass is always greener, right? Because when I got out into the real world, I was sort of like, oh my God, it was so much safer and easier. I'm back on Air Farce.
I figured you'd probably just think, well, there's another TV show around the corner, because you had a string of them up to that point.
I did think there'd be another TV show around the corner. And one of the CBC execs even said, yep, there's a TV show for you just around the corner. And it didn't happen. And I pitched a few shows and they didn't happen.
What kind of shows? Can I?
Sitcoms.
Okay.
Yeah, sitcoms. And just none of it came. And that's where I'll circle back to the start of the interview, when I said having it so easy at the beginning made it hard when it stopped being easy. And for me, it was when I left Air Farce, and faced rejection after rejection after rejection, that's kind of when I truly paid my dues. It was like I was starting from scratch. It was crazy. The difference is, though, I was a mom by that time, and my life and creativity and passion was sort of wrapped up in my kids. And so I didn't have the go-getter attitude to go like chase down my dreams.
Right.
I just sort of felt like I love doing comedy. If anyone wants to hire me to do some comedy, you have my number. And that's how it was for the few years when my kids were little. I wasn't making new opportunities for myself. I was just saying yes to whatever came along. And then a few years ago, that's when creatively I started to get back in the saddle and start creating opportunities for myself again.
Right. You do the corporate gigs. You're still a comedian. You're a motivational speaker.
Yeah.
You're a mom. Sometimes I imagine all three at once.
Yes.
At the same time.
Which is really confusing and leaves me short-tempered. You can tell the only times I get annoyed with my kids is when I have a show coming up and I just feel like I can't have a foot in both worlds at the same time. It's too crazy. Yeah. I need to do one or the other. So usually if I have a show coming up, I'll go stay at a hotel the night before just so I can have like 24 hours of not finding someone's socks or putting sunscreen on someone or whatever, but just kind of getting into my Zen place.
It's good to get on the road when you got little kids at home, isn't it? You love them, but sometimes it's
I know.
nice.
It's okay. Mommy needs a break. So the thing I was talking about that's a few years ago when I started creating my own opportunities again, that was on the motivational side of things. I trained as a wellness coach because I had been through a depression and felt like when I recovered from that depression, I just thought, okay, what's the opposite of depressed? What does it mean to be living completely and wholly in your life? And so studying up on wellness, and I got really into health and exercise and cooking good food and meditating and stuff like that. So
you studied that in order to get out of the depression?
I was already out of the depression, but I just studied that so that I could keep out of the depression, so that I wouldn't just fall back into it, because unfortunately that's what happens with a lot of mental illnesses. You can go back and forth a lot, and I just didn't want to go back to that place. So I made some lifestyle changes, and I just loved the results of it were so immediate that I felt like I have to share this on stage. And so when people do go to the Speaker Spotlight website, you'll see you can hire me as a comedian or you can hire me for motivational talks. And I probably do a 50-50 split. And I love doing comedy. Like those are fun nights where we're just laughing the whole time. But the motivational talks, like they just fill me up. I just feel connected to my purpose.
And there are laughs in the motivational talk.
Absolutely. I still do singing and characters and stuff like that. And then I just sneak a little self-help info in there.
Maybe the laughs are a greater relief or
they
release
are.
even.
Yeah, and that's what the feedback has been, that people say it makes them really feel and really think, and then they get to laugh in appreciation for like being okay after the trials that we all go through.
So this came about naturally. You didn't take the wellness course in order.
I wasn't like, this is my next career step. No, it was fully so that I could not go back to a depression.
Yeah. It was postpartum?
Well, I went through postpartum depression, and then a few years later, I just went through depression. And that one was scarier because postpartum depression, you think, okay, it's going to start after you have kids, and then it's going to end a while later. When the second depression came, it freaked me right out because I thought, well, what does this mean for the rest of my life? Like depressions will just pop up. It was the worst news I'd ever heard and about my own health and well-being. And that's why it was so important to me to make changes. I mean, because when I went through it, it took me 2 years to get diagnosed with depression. And in those 2 years, I just kind of withdrew from my whole life. And even as a mom withdrew, and as a wife, I withdrew from all of it. And finally, when I came out of it, I was like, I can't disappear from my own life again. That's awful.
You were still working?
I was still working. And the way that this is why I'm working on a second book now, so that I can kind of explain to people how this type of thing happens. But I was a high-functioning depressed person where from 9 to 5, I laid on the sofa and just watched TV and ate and watched TV and watched TV. And
That's pretty
the
good
doorbell
life.
would ring. Oh, I know my friends were like, oh, I'm so envious. But I was like, I don't really like it.
Yeah.
But I just couldn't find the will to get up and do anything. And then when my kids came home, I was genuinely happy to see them. And then when I would go perform, I could fake being happy for 1 hour. Like twice a week for an hour, I can fake being happy at that point. And but it felt so dishonest, and I felt jealous of the audience. When I'd see the audience sitting there laughing, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine being that carefree. How are they doing that? What's their secret? So that was a really strange moment, because I was up on stage looking like I'm the life of the party, and on the inside I just felt so dead, so hollow.
Do you feel that comedians suffer this a lot?
Yeah, and I think it's a chicken and egg situation where they both cause each other. Like, I think that people who are deep thinkers and very analytical and maybe think too much are the ones who become comedians. And then the lifestyle is such that if you did start falling into a depression, no one would notice, because you don't have regular office hours. You don't have to keep up with the Joneses. You're allowed to show up for work drunk. You're allowed to show up for work high. You can be late. You can be sloppy. All of these warning signs that would show up if you were in a 9-to-5 job. For these people, it doesn't show up. And then the other aspect of it is using all of your gifts and talents and making a room laugh so loud that they give you a giant standing ovation feels like, oh my gosh, I'm the king of the world. I have used every bit of my talent, and these people have received it, and it's just bliss. It's total bliss. And then the next morning, you're taking out the garbage and auditioning for a diaper commercial you don't even get. So for your ego to go back and forth, I mean, you have to have some semblance of ego to get up on stage in front of people. You have to feel a little cocky. You have to feel brave. You have to channel that part of you. And then the next morning, there's nothing to do with those feelings. There's not really any outlet. And so you have to be able to turn off your emotions. And I don't think that that's the healthiest way to live. So for someone who is maybe predisposed to mental illness or is on the more sensitive scale, that can be really hard. So I look at someone like Robin Williams, and I think I understand that. Like, I understand that mental illness plus addiction plus career highs and lows it's a terrible mix.
Yeah, even if you're rich enough to have servants to take out the garbage for you,
yep,
you're still back in your house.
Well, and
going,
the whole
where's
and
the
my
adoration?
thing is, yeah, and even if that wasn't what his mindset was at the time, the type of creative people who go far in comedy, it's such an interesting level of sensitivity and insight, and to be able to be so funny, to feel things so deeply means you can also feel pain so deeply. And so I would describe comedians as very sensitive people who really want to make their mark in the world, and it can hurt when that opportunity is taken away from you.
You ever hear that idea that if you're not in a depressed state, but if you're not in a good mood, and you smile, you can kind of trick yourself into being happier? Because
yeah, I've heard that, and now there's a woman on the speaking circuit who talks about just body language and posture can make you feel more powerful and confident.
So I was thinking, when you're on stage and you're being funny and you're smiling and you're the life of the party kind of thing, it still didn't trick you. Like, once that ended, you're like,
because it was a true depression. Like, it was an actual chemical imbalance, and so it takes more than smiling. And the thing is, like, I had an amazing husband, I had kids, I had money, a house, a car, family. I had everything.
And you could tell yourself that doesn't help.
And it didn't help. And I think it was tough for my friends to find sympathy for me, because I did have all of those things. And if they were struggling to, paycheck to paycheck, it was hard for them to look at me feeling sorry for myself when I was so immune to the types of problems they faced. And I just had to suck it up and deal with that no one needs to understand my depression or my moods or anything like that except for me. And in my case, my husband really helped me through it. And I remember actually saying to a friend one day, she was like, well, I just don't understand why you're not doing this thing. It was something that would have been like emotionally difficult for me and outside of my comfort zone. And I said, you know what? I don't need anyone's validation or justification. It's something Scott gets, and that's all I need. And I appreciate that. I also know I have to wear my big girl pants and know that I just have to suck it up sometimes.
Yeah. And people generally don't understand depression.
No, absolutely not. Like people do think, and I know there is such thing as circumstantial depression, where maybe you've been fired from a job and you've been looking for work for 6 months. And if you became depressed, then yes, the depression would be specifically related to a circumstance. Mine was truly a chemical imbalance. It was, I had my therapist draw me a diagram one day because I was like, I still don't get it. And she just said, well, picture that there's a wire mesh between the outside world and your mind. And the only things that can get through the mesh into your mind are negative things. So even though all these positive things are happening in your world right outside of you, the only things that enter into your mind are the sad things and the negative things. And that helped me to see it and to not blame myself. And I didn't want to lose 2 years of my life. That sucked. It really sucked. And there's not fairness to it. There's no rhyme and reason to it. And I don't know what caused it, other than, I guess, a lack of resilience that I try and work on now. But people don't understand the chemical imbalance side necessarily. They just think it's someone's having a pity party and they're spoiled enough that they can just sit in bed all day.
So it's a chemical imbalance. Can they look at that? Can they see that for... is there something, a brain scan or something?
Apparently there is a brain scan where you can see the decreased level of activity in certain parts of the brain. But normally they just ask you a series of questions. Like they say, how is your marriage? How is your job? And when all of those things are fine, then they say, well, then it's chemical then, because your circumstances are all lined up. And if you have if you have trouble sleeping, if you are angry all the time, if you cry for no reason, if you what it is, if you do 5 out of a list of, I think, 8 things, then you are diagnosed as clinically depressed.
I see.
Yeah.
But you're good now?
I'm great now.
Good.
I'm great now because I know what the difference is. And I have markers where I know if I ever even came close to that line again of, for example, even if I'm not working, I only watch an hour of TV during the day. So even if I'm home from 9 to 5 and no one else is home and I have nothing to do, the TV's not going on for more than an hour, because if I do 5 hours one day, that's it. That's going to become my life again, and then I'll be living on the sofa.
Does that include Netflix?
That includes Netflix. 1 hour of screen time.
It's like a kid.
Yeah.
What is your 1 hour of screen time?
Oh, it's so terrible. It's like Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. But then some good stuff too. Better Call Saul.
That I just saw the first episode, or the first 2. Loved it.
It's intriguing. It's so stylized.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
That's Jessica Holmes I'm talking to. I'm Guy McPherson, and the show is What's So Funny. You're listening to Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM.
I love my kids. I have a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old. God bless them. They are incredible. But you know how when you first have them, and they're so amazing, and you get them home, and you go like, oh my God, I love my baby so much. It's so much more beautiful than anyone else's baby. It's so much better than your baby. My baby's amazing. And then they start to grow a little bit, and then their teeth get crooked, and they bite, and they become precocious, which is just another word for bitch. Quite frankly. And then you kind of start to notice you've focused a bit more on the kids, and you focus a titch less on the marriage. And the only way that I know that this is sort of a universal thing, and my husband doesn't mind me saying so, right, honey?
Right.
He's the guy with the blue balls over there. Anyway. So, I was trying to spice up our love life, and I was like, just because we have kids doesn't mean we can't, still be hot. Like, maybe I'll go get a tattoo. And he goes, yeah, get tumbleweeds on your hooch. So, anyway. That's cool. So we did this study. I'm part of a mom's group called MomNet. We get together all the time. We just we hand our babies off to some strangers who work for $8 an hour, and then we do a bit of exercise and we chat. And this one week we decided we were all going to fill out these questionnaires to find out about satisfaction in marriage, to help our marriage to be like they were before the kids. And it was really great. So the husbands and wives filled them out anonymously. He filled his out. privately. She fills hers out privately. No one puts their names on them. They brought all of our sheets back. We go over all the sheets. Now the women, we tally up this information, and the women's information is sort of like, okay, well, I love my husband so much, like he's strong, he's a good provider, but I want to hold my hand. Sometimes I just want to say, how was your day? Or, it must be hard. It's hard with those kids. I just want validation and hugs. And then we have this long stream of information. It's all these subcategories and stuff. The men, overwhelmingly, were just like, touch my penis. Just touch it. You know what? Don't even touch it. Look at it. Throw something at it. Nudge it with a broom. And so you just have to feel. You have to feel for these poor men. My husband. Oh my God! One day, I just again. It was like day 3 of the sweatpants, and he was like, oh, hon, just mind if I give you a little shoulder rub? And I was like, oh, for God's sakes, here's $20. Go down to the Queensway and get a massage. But it was worth it, though. Was it good, right? It was good?
Awesome.
So you mentioned Robin Williams. You ever work with him?
No, I have not worked with him. The really well-known people that I've worked with, I opened for Jerry Seinfeld
Yes, I
once.
know that.
He was so nice.
Was he?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, he was very nice.
And this was in Toronto?
In Toronto. It was a benefit for Mount Sinai Hospital.
Yeah.
And I didn't know this, but Mount Sinai Hospital was started because Jewish doctors weren't able to find work elsewhere.
I didn't know that.
So they started their own hospital, and now it's, of course, the cutting-edge leader hospital. And it's so I opened for him there. I did a movie that Ray Romano was in. He was very nice, very sweet.
What movie?
It was called Welcome to Mooseport.
Oh,
I had a
I've
teeny
heard of
tiny
that.
role,
Yeah.
but yeah, he was very sweet. And I just met Catherine O'Hara the other night.
Oh,
that was
really?
awesome.
Fellow Second City alum.
Yeah, she was a SCTV gal, and yeah, I've gotten to meet these people, and it's such a challenge to try and play it cool and try and act like I don't care, because the last thing a celebrity wants is for people to go nuts over them. It makes them uncomfortable. So I'm trying not to go nuts, but I sure do feel bonkers on the inside. Like, I'm so excited.
But I also imagine that if somebody just ignored them, they wouldn't like that either. They go,
no,
hey,
the
don't
thing
you
is
recognize
they
me?
just want people to be normal around them, and
Yeah.
it's the hardest thing in the world.
Like maybe a compliment.
Yeah. Oh, hey,
But
I'm a
no-
fan of your work.
Yeah.
And then you chill out.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you opened for Ellen? Did
I
you?
did open for Ellen. There was 1 year where I did a series of shows called The Power Within, and they were live shows across Canada. And so I opened for Ellen in 2 cities, and I didn't get to meet her. She had, I believe, 30 security guards
That's crazy.
as a circle around her the whole time. But it was really interesting.
Why? What's going to happen?
People are so nuts for her, partly because she seems like your best friend on TV. She just seems like the gal you connect with right away. You want to be her best friend. And when she was on stage, she acknowledged that and said, I do love you guys as a group, and I wish there was enough time in the day for me to meet all of you. But she said, people come up to me and they say, just 2 minutes, just 2 minutes. But she said 1,000 people times 2 minutes is too much. So she's like, I just say no to everybody. And I understood that, because people were coming up to me during one of the breaks in the day, and they were just crying, talking to me because I had just been backstage where Ellen was. Like, the mentality is like she's your long lost sister or something. Yeah. So she's had to become very guarded. I'm sure she's struggled with it a lot.
But Jerry Seinfeld has always been a guy who's gone out in the public. He doesn't care. I remember talking to Tom Papa once, who opens for him and is one of his best friends. And this was long before comedians in cars getting coffee. I don't know if you watch that. Yeah. But he said, oh no, like, he'll go to the mall, he'll go to a baseball game. He doesn't care.
Yeah, I guess he's a guy who's enough of an extrovert and a guy who gives off a vibe like, sure, you can say hi to me, but I'm just going to say hi back. Like,
that's right.
No one's expecting more than a quick hi and a picture, whereas someone like Ellen has made her brand that she's the fun girl and the life of the party. And
I see.
so I think people expect her to do something to them. Like, they want her to, like, heal them magically or become her instant best friend or something.
But you know what I'm thinking? Talk show host. Jessica Holmes.
Oh, gosh.
Canada needs a talk show.
I would love
You'd be
that. I would love
great.
to do a talk show. The only thing is if it's an evening talk show, it'll have to tape at like 4 p.m. because I'm a morning person.
I think most of them do.
I think
don't
they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because crew wants to go home. Crew's got to eat dinner with their family.
But that's not been something that you've pitched or has been talked about?
I've never pitched a talk show. No, I've never pitched a late night thing. I sort of feel though in these years that I'm paying my dues and working on my material and getting so comfortable in front of all audiences. And the beautiful thing about comedy is there's no expiration date. There's no time limit on it. If I only did TV, I might worry that getting older means there's going to be less parts, less roles. But in comedy, as long as you're funny, you're just going to keep being in demand.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hope that comes someday. That'd be amazing to go back to TV. And when it happens, it happens.
And what do you think? Do you think it'll happen?
At some point. I don't think I'm going to go to my grave never being on another series.
Right.
Yeah, I think it will. But friends have told me that when their kids turn like 13, that's it. They're off with their friends. They have their own lives. They kind of want you to have your own life. And so I figure when my kids get to about that age, then I'll start.
How old are they now?
They're 7 and 9.
7 and 9.
Yeah. So I'll put the career wheels in gear.
I've got 2 years
Nice.
before 13
Oh,
happens.
congratulations.
Yeah. That's Jessica Holmes I'm talking to. I'm Guy McPherson, and the show is What's So Funny. You're listening to Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. Here's what I'm fascinated by. You were a missionary.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's so funny when people bring that up. I go, I was? Right. It's such
Were you a
other
teenager?
life. No, I was 21. I served as a missionary for the Mormon Church in Venezuela from let me think. Yeah, from when I was 21 till 22 and a half. And it was so challenging, but really fulfilling and meaningful work. I got enough sunburns to last me a whole lifetime because you're outside knocking on doors from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m.
And did you speak Spanish?
I learned Spanish really quickly because I had to. So I went down to Utah and trained, was taught Spanish for 5 weeks in an intensive. And then that was it. Went down to Venezuela, lived with a Venezuelan gal and got right to work. And that's, I would say, part of what made me passionate about being in a career in communication was being in Venezuela and realizing for the first time that I had a personality. And the only way I knew I had a personality was because I couldn't show it. I couldn't use it for the first time because I couldn't speak Spanish. So if I'd have funny thoughts or interesting little jokes I wanted to tell, and it couldn't come out because I just didn't have the language.
Hard to be funny in a second language.
I know. And I tried and just failed miserably. And people just thought I was such a big weirdo for the first few months. But I remember thinking, okay, you know what? There seems to be something in me that really needs to get my ideas across. And so when I came home, I went back to Ryerson and finished my radio and television degree. And a friend dared me to do stand-up. And that was that.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
So how many converts did you get?
I got probably 8 or 10. And it's
That's
strange
pretty
because
good
I'm
in
not,
a year and a half, isn't it?
It's good by, like, if you were in North America or if you were in Europe, you might only expect to get one convert your whole year and a half mission. But in South America, I guess people are more open to that type of thing. And so you would expect to get somewhere between 10 and 20.
But that's a largely Catholic country, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. We had a lot of doors slammed, one bucket of urine thrown at us.
What?
I know.
They just were waiting.
I was
We've got
chased
this
out of
bucket
one.
of urine.
I was chased out of one neighborhood by children. It was like, it was an amazing time, and it's bittersweet for me because obviously I'm not Mormon now and wouldn't want to convert anyone to anything now. But at the time, that was very important to me, and I love the work that I did, and I think it did make a difference in some people's lives. But if I were ever to go back to Venezuela, I don't know. I think it would just be too bittersweet. I'd feel too much like that part of me is a stranger to me. Like I don't know that person.
So you were really into the Mormon Church, Latter-day Saints.
Yes, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
And you said, obviously, I'm not now. When did that conversion happen?
When I moved in with my Jewish boyfriend, probably. No, you know what? I served my mission. I went home to Ottawa and moved to Toronto again to finish my degree. And when I started doing comedy, there was this whole world that opened up to me where I felt at home. Like I felt so connected to this new world of comedy. And a few of my friends at church were not so keen on me being a part of, going to bars every night and where people are smoking and drinking. And as I fell in love with one, I fell out of love with the other. So in a way, comedy took over for spirituality for me for a while.
The devil.
Yeah, the devil
Devil
of
got
comedy.
you.
And also, I mean, I had new friends I was meeting in the comedy circuit who were gay, and then thinking, wait, I don't think my church is pro-gay. And although that's changed now, at the time it was, you couldn't be Mormon and you couldn't be gay and go to Mormon heaven kind of thing. And so I couldn't reconcile that, and I left the church. But
And you realize these friends of yours, they're great people, even though they're gay.
Exactly.
And then there was that cognitive dissonance
so I thought,
in your
I'm
head.
sorry, but I think I'm on the right side of history here. I think you guys are wrong, and I couldn't be a part of it anymore. So I left, but I did miss the congregation singing hymns together and stuff like that. So a few years ago, my husband and I joined the Unitarian Church because Unitarians say whatever you believe is awesome.
Whatever. I know my mom joined that.
Yeah. See,
Yeah.
so my husband, he can be as Jewish as he wants. I can be as agnostic as I want. It's just people showing up together trying to make the world a better place every Sunday. And so now we do that, and I feel really good knowing my gay friends can go and my comedians friends can go and whoever wants.
So it was a community that you missed more than the dogma.
Exactly. Don't miss the dogma at all, but really missed knowing that there are people who want to make the world a better place, and who are actually active about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was nice to go back to.
Now, your father was Mormon.
Yeah.
Was your mother?
No, she was always an agnostic feminist.
Yeah, I remember hearing that your dad was Mormon, your mom was a feminist, and I'm thinking, is that mutually exclusive? Could you be a feminist and a Mormon?
You could be, but it would be a little ironic because you could never have the calling that the men have in the church.
Oh, I
so I do know some Mormon feminists, and I think they probably struggle with, yes, it's the right church for me, but man, oh man, am I ever frustrated by some of their policies. But somehow my parents made their marriage work.
So your dad would go to church?
He would go to church, gave 10%, and he still does, gives 10% of his paycheck to the church. And
your mom doesn't
and my mom doesn't go. So
That's amazing.
They have really separate things going on in their lives, but they're very, very in love. And they both absolutely believe in doing the right thing. At the center of their core, they're the people who would find a wallet with money in it and would search the rest of their lives to find the rightful owner and give it back to them. They're both such good people, but their outlets for it are totally different. She's a therapist at a rape crisis center, and he's a computer tech Mormon. So he's right wing, she's left wing, and it's their deeper thing that holds them together. And my own husband and I are like that. He sort of tricked me. When we got married, he was, I call him Earth Scott, where he was just totally guy into all the same things I was into, movies and shopping and food and stuff. And then he went on his own spiritual path to the point where he is now a full-time energy healer. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm living my mother's life. Yeah, he does that kind of thing. Opened up a shop at Jane and Bloor in Toronto. And so it's funny, a friend of mine was saying, well, you mustn't have anything in common anymore. And I said, no, we have the deepest things in common. We both really have the same view on our roles in the world to make the world a better place. And for me, it's trying to do it through comedy. And for him, it's trying to do it through spiritual healing and counseling. But because I grew up in a house where my parents didn't need to do everything together and didn't have to have hobbies in common, for me, there's nothing weird about my marriage. Other people might sort of say, why do you guys do so much apart? Why do you do so much separately? But I think we're at the core just pretty independent people. I've
always thought that too. You don't need to have specific things in common that you do together. It's got to be something deeper that you share. Yeah, and I have friends for the other things. I have I don't need him to join the women's basketball team with me. I'm okay for him to stay home. Wait, are you in women's basketball?
I'm in women's basketball and women's soccer.
Love it. So no, he's not going to join the women's basketball league.
No.
But you got friends for that. So, but your parents, do you have siblings?
Yeah, I have brothers.
Brothers. And so your mom was okay with the kids being raised in the church.
My brothers were raised in the Mormon church, and I was raised, see, this is the part that doesn't make any sense to me even today. My dad got the boys to go to his church, so my mom got me to go to her church, which is the Catholic church, but she didn't go to it. So it was sort of like she just didn't want me to be Mormon. So I went by myself. She'd give me a few bucks to put in the communion, whatever the heck that's called. But I had to go to Catholic church by myself for years. And it was so stupid.
And you did?
I didn't. I took the money
okay.
and I went to the corner store, and then I hung out at the schoolyard by myself.
Smoking.
But I guess if her goal was for me to not, go be with the Mormons, it worked until I was 18 and was allowed to pick my own religion, and I chose Mormon.
Just to fit in with the brothers?
Well, I actually really like the church. Their commercials are pretty convincing. Those feel-good commercials.
Because you were watching TV. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, I got, my piano teacher got converted from, she was Spanish and a Catholic, and then she converted to Latter-day Saints, and she got me to go, and I was put in a room, given this talk by whoever it was. I just said, I said I'd go for her.
Yeah.
But nothing came of it.
No, it's, either
I'm too skeptical
you're a
by
believer
nature.
or not. Yeah.
Yeah. But so then when you joined, was she just heartbroken?
Probably, but she didn't say it. She's one of those, if you're happy, I'm happy.
She eventually won, though, when you left.
She eventually won.
Victory!
And you know what? I had this great talk with her where I was like, Mom, I have to leave, and this means that I might not get to go to heaven. And she was like, well, then it's going to be you and me and the gays hanging out in purgatory, and we're going to have the best time. Mm-hmm. So I like that answer.
Your brother's still in the church?
One of them semi is.
Yeah.
The other's not.
And was your dad very upset when you left?
No, the talk that I had with him, when I let him know that I was leaving it, I said, I feel like the church no longer represents what my values are. And he said, well, Jess, what I want you to do is live your values. No one else's values, just yours. So if they aren't here, I want you to follow them wherever they take you. And I trust you to live by this stuff. I have dream parents.
Yeah.
They're pretty awesome.
Very progressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of fun. A lot of fun board games and contests and gambling. And
that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And so you were in Venezuela, and then I saw a video of you in Tanzania.
Yes, that was for World Vision. After my son was born, someone offered me to go away for 6 nights and stay in hotels. So I was like, sign me up. So yes, off I went to Tanzania with World Vision. And the interesting thing is, James Vanderberg, who hired me for that first stand-up, his job was talent booking for World Vision. So he's actually the guy that I went to Tanzania with, the guy who originally started my comedy career.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a pretty great experience, though, too, wasn't it?
It was. I think that at the time I was suffering from postpartum depression and didn't know it. So I was pretty fuzzy at the time, like a little foggy, a little off. And part of being depressed is your regular gamut of emotions is really narrowed. And so I remember thinking, like, it's weird that I don't find it sad to see a baby at an AIDS clinic, or it's pretty weird that I'm not so happy for this woman who's getting sponsored for the first time.
You're just in a fog.
Yeah.
Observing.
Yeah. Now
almost
I
like you're
look
looking at it on TV.
Yeah. And now when I watch the video, I'm like sobbing and I'm like, that's so beautiful. Oh my God, the poor babies, let's all sponsor them. But at the time it was different.
Yeah. Well, things are going great for you. You're here in Vancouver, working tonight. Mm-hmm. When this is recorded, of course, a few weeks ago now.
Yeah.
For the listeners. You should come back and perform so the general public can come out.
Yeah, I've been meaning to do that, and I think when my book comes out, I think I'm going to do a tour where I actually, go to smaller theaters and invite everyone to come pay $10 and have a laugh.
Your first book was
called I Love Your Laugh.
I Love Your Laugh. And
it was in 2010.
Yeah. And so are you working on the second one?
Yeah, the second one, I've absolutely been working on it. And it's every time I think it's close to being finished, the theme of it changes. So, but again, like I said, I'm not in any kind of rush. So when I can work on it, I do. But I want to do it right.
And you'll figure out what the theme is as you
write
it.
Yes, eventually, hopefully by the time it's on bookshelves, I won't still be standing there rewriting it.
Don't you hate writing?
Scribbling. I love it.
Oh, you do like it.
And I love deadlines and all that stuff. See, I'm a keener.
You are. You're a go-getter.
Yeah.
J-Ho.
See why I don't fit in the comedy clubs?
That's right. Yeah.
I'm a morning person, and I like my parents.
Good point.
I have nothing in common with my peers. Yeah.
Well, we hope to see you on television again soon, or somewhere where the general public can see it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nice chatting with you.
Nice talking with you. There you go. Jessica Holmes' first ever podcast. Not her first radio show. First ever podcast. I think we learned a lot about Jessica. I know I did. I hope you did too. Hope you enjoyed it. And maybe next time she's in town, we'll get to see her live, doing her thing, doing the thing that she does best. Well, she does so many things well. You read her book and see her motivational talks online and all that kind of stuff. But live is best, as I got to experience in St. John. But anyway, it was great talking to her. And yeah, as I say, next time I hope that we could see her here performing comedy. And maybe she'll talk to me again. Who knows? Hope so. Thanks for listening. Good night.